I'm going to dive into the 5 richest people alive today and the 5 richest people from history and how they all made their money. Because I think there is one way to look at how they made their money that is not so helpful, and another way to look at how they made their money that is very enlightening, and that if you adopt this second perspective, you have much more of a roadmap in terms of guiding one towards extreme wealth, right? So, we go ahead and run down the list of the top 5 people who have the most money or most estimated wealth today. Elon Musk, right? Known as the founder and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Number 2 on the list, Larry Page, co-founder of Google or Alphabet Inc. Right? Number 3, Sergey Brin, another co-founder of Google. Number 4, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon. Number 5, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, right? And with these 5 gentlemen as examples, first going to dive into the less helpful way of looking at it, right? Which is that Elon Musk made his money in Tesla and SpaceX, right? One is like, let's just call it a space company, right? They deal with rockets and satellites and other things orbiting in space, Starlink and stuff like that. And then you can look at it as also Tesla being a car company, right? Making these electric vehicles, the cyber trucks, right? Along those same lines, you would then look at Larry Page and Sergey Brin, co-founders of Google, and thinking, okay, well, they got in on search engines. Well, those were kind of the dominant force on the internet, and within the search engines were able to incorporate advertising, right? Delivering those ads with high quality search results, and that's how they made their money. And Jeff Bezos, well, he got in on Amazon, right? Started with helping people find books, but then grew into all other sorts of e-commerce, and now gets into things like AWS, cloud computing, logistics, etc., etc. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, right? He got in on the social media craze, right? One of the big guys to see that was a huge opportunity for the future, right? And so all these guys maybe picked up on certain opportunities, but they're all in different fields, different areas of expertise. And although their companies have grown and expanded in scope and in size, certainly, right? They were just kind of different tech heads who very smart in their own fields and leveraged that with certain opportunities for fields that had high growth potentials. So they kind of got in on the ground floor. And me, if I'm not someone who's super techie, if I'm not someone with great ideas of my own, if I'm not someone that's a super coder, if I'm not someone that is going to found my own company and start my own enterprise, I'm not someone that does it when I was very young, like they started out at, then I can't really get in on the fun in the same way that they can or that they did, right? That is the first way I'm going to present of thinking about things, which I, again, feel is not so helpful, not so empowering, and I would even say misses the mark, right? Not that anything I said was really too inaccurate, right? It wasn't just like I was lying about these people and what they did. But what I'm now going to get into is a second perspective. And this second perspective, I believe, is way more empowering and way more insightful. Now go back through the list again. Elon Musk. He was the owner of some companies, Tesla and SpaceX, and then leveraged employees working for those companies and money via investors investing in those companies to help grow the companies while still maintaining a large degree of ownership. Page and Brin, co-founders of Google, owned the company Google, leveraged other employees who worked there to help grow the company, and then via it going public and being traded on stock exchanges, leveraged money from outside investors to bring more money into the company that allowed them to operate in their market to a greater degree. Bezos with Amazon. The founder or original owner of Amazon leveraged the employees working for Amazon to help grow it, leveraged money from investors to help grow it, while still maintaining a significant share of ownership so that as it grew, his share of ownership became more valuable. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook / original owner of Facebook, leveraged the skills of his employees who work there and money from different investors via stock to help grow the company. And as the company grew, his ownership share became more valuable. And when you look at it in this way, all of these 5 richest people used ownership and leverage to become extremely wealthy. You may just be thinking, well, this is just kind of a moment in time, but maybe that's just something that is indicative of the current moment that we live in. So, in my attempt to dispel that from your mind, I am going to now dive into the 5 richest people from history, according to these search results. Mansa Musa, 9th ruler of the Mali Empire, right? Often regarded as the wealthiest person in history. Fortune came primarily from the empire's vast gold and salt resources. Number 2 on the list, John D. Rockefeller, American industrialist who founded the Standard Oil Company, right? And she at one time controlled over 90% of U.S. refineries and pipelines. Talk about a monopoly. Third on the list, Andrew Carnegie, amassed his fortune through the expansion of the American steel industry, right? He was the guy in charge of Carnegie Steel. Number 4 on the list, Augustus Caesar, right? The first Roman emperor. Say his wealth was largely tied to land, taxation, and control over the Roman economy. I can sense the thoughts twirling in your head. We gonna get there. Number 5 on the list, Genghis Khan, founder of the Mongol Empire, amassed wealth through conquest and control of the largest contiguous empire in history, right? Say much of his wealth was in land and resources rather than liquid assets, but in controlling this land, He had influence and control over trade routes and territories that made him extremely, extremely rich. So you may be thinking, well, three of these people on the list, Mansa Musa, Augustus Caesar, Genghis Khan, they were like emperors or rulers or kings, right? And like, I'm sure that by this point in your life, you've realized that you are not a monarch yourself, right? You do not have a kingdom, you do not have an empire, and the chances of you getting one may be very limited. So, Jamal, why are you telling me about this stuff, dog? That don't apply to me. What's I'm supposed to do with that? Again, going to run through the list, not even with this less empowered perspective, right? Just going to come at you with the good stuff straight from the start this time. Mansa Musa, owner of the resources of the Mali Empire, as he leveraged his citizens and their work to mine resources, expand the empire, trade with others, he kept ownership of those resources, and his wealth grew as a result. Rockefeller, Standard Oil Company, right? Owner or owned a large share of the Standard Oil Company. Then as that company grew, developed a monopoly, he was able to leverage the employees working there to do the work to help the company grow, therefore making his ownership stake much more valuable. Carnegie with steel, owner of a large share of the Standard Oil Company, of Carnegie Steel, then leveraging the employees that work there and his influence to help grow the company so that his ownership share would become more valuable. Caesar, right? Owner of the resources of the Roman Empire, was able to leverage the Roman army and the Roman citizens to expand the empire, to make its resources more valuable and more large, so that his ownership share became more valuable. Genghis Khan, owner of the resources of the Mongol Empire, able to leverage the Mongol army and its land and resources, including those trade routes, so that as the empire grew, his ownership and the value of that ownership grew as well, right? So again, in looking at it from this perspective, the richest people in history and the richest people today have used ownership and leverage to create vast, vast amounts of wealth. Money! Right? Now, again, you may not be the founder of a company, but buying shares in a company is buying partial ownership of that company. And being part owner like that, you are not then working for the company yourself, but the company has employees, and the employees are working and doing activities that help the company to be profitable and to grow And to the extent that it grows and becomes more profitable, the value of your ownership may increase, right? That may happen through dividends, right? Excess profit that's distributed to the shareholders, or it may happen with the value of the company going up as measured by the value of the stock price. So kind of multiple ways that you may capitalize on this ownership, right? It may even be that other people investing in the company after you bought into it helps to increase the value, drive up the value, and then your share of ownership becomes more valuable. Now you're leveraging other people's money to help grow your share of ownership, right? So it does not take founding one's own company to be able to get in on this wealth stuff. What I believe helps a lot is understanding these principles of ownership and leverage. And I'm not the only one that talks about these things, right? I would recommend the book, The Almanac of Naval Cavant, I believe. The Navalmanac, as it's colloquially called, right? He talks about leverage a lot, right? And I think he's on like podcasts and stuff like that. So like you can look him up, you can listen to him, like you can hear it from someone that has way more money than me saying very much the same things that I'm saying. Like, you don't got to take my word for it. You don't got to listen to me. And like, I would even say like, I'm not giving you in particular financial advice. I'm sharing my own opinion about how I see the world, how I see that these wealthiest people now and in history, how they've made their money, right? And in seeing how they've had their money and adopting this perspective, I have seen a way that I can get in on the fun and that I can leverage the effort and money of others to raise the value of my little ownership shares when I bought stocks. So, the other thing I'm going to point out that maybe you thought of, maybe you didn't, is that yes, these were the owners and they amassed vast amounts of wealth, but what about those people that they leveraged, right? What about the little guy? What about the people working at the company that did not have the ownership shares, right? They may have been working there since very close to the beginning as well, but because they did not have shares of ownership, they did not profit to the same degree. And there were some people who were part owners, maybe through early investments, that were not the founders, that did not have the tech ideas, that did not have the same level of expertise or notoriety, but because they were owners, they were able to make a lot of money as the company grew. And maybe those who were actually contributing more from a certain perspective, right, in terms of like the activity that they did to help the company, or their like ideas and innovations, right, they didn't necessarily profit to the same extent, right? And the thing is, like, when you have employees at a company, right, it's not like they get nothing out of the deal, right? Like, they are not slaves, right? They accept a paycheck in exchange for their time and effort. And so, yeah, it's not the same deal as ownership, right? Unless it is some sort of like stock options or profit sharing, those sorts of arrangements. But those sorts of arrangements are rare. And I would go so far as to say they are rare because the owners of these companies, the people that have the shares, recognize the value in ownership, which gets back to the point I was talking about, right? So it's not like you can just offer people nothing, and that the people that have helped make these companies grow, whose names we may never know, right? It's not like their contributions were so much smaller or even smaller at all than these founders themselves. But they knew the deal when they signed up for it, right? When they agreed to be employees of the company, they knew what they were getting into. And they agreed to do it. And so it's not a bad thing if then, as the company grows, makes money, the owners get to profit in a way that maybe the employees did not, because there is no guarantee that the company is going to grow and make money and be profitable. And if it goes out of business, right, the ownership shares, right, they declare bankruptcy, the ownership shares kind of plummets in value, right? But the salaries do not. Certainly not in the same way. Now, there may be layoffs and other things, but while you're working, you're getting paid. With ownership, company may be going. Second it stops, ownership value can drop to zero in some cases. So, leveraging the work of the employees of a company does not have to be seen as a negative thing. And what I would even say is the extent to which I may see that as a negative, or even see accumulating wealth as a negative thing, I believe that would interfere with my ability to become wealthy, right? Like, why would I pursue a path that I feel like is not good? So I just want to point that out to say, like, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And so I believe that if there is someone watching this and part of them feels like making money is dirty or making money is going to make them dirty, my belief is that that person would have a much less chance of ever making a whole lot of money, because part of them will be fighting against making the money because they feel like it is not aligned with their best self. So, hope you have picked up on the principles I've shared in terms of ownership and leverage. I hope you see how stock trading can be a way to engage with ownership and leverage. And I hope you tune in for the next video and subscribe to the series, because we're going to be getting into more deep stuff and I'm very excited about it. So, thank you, I love you, and take care.